Don't shade with purple. Don't shade with purple. Don't shade with purple. Only shade with purple. Only shade with yellow. Don't shade with purple. Okay, roll the intro. Now, listen, I want to give the benefit of the doubt right up top here. It's possible that whoever originally posted this whole like don't shade with purple thing was attempting to explain a more nuanced point, kind of like what I'm about to get into right here. Along the lines of don't always shade with purple because there's different lighting conditions, in which case you might want a different tint for your shadow colors, which is good advice. But the internet is going to do what the internet's going to do, and all I've seen regarding it is either people repackaging a little soundbite of like, don't use purple to do good art, and just sharing that to algorithms that don't care what you're saying as long as you're posting as much as possible. Or more common, thankfully, a lot of artists kind of ratioing those posts and saying that that's stupid advice said by stupid people to mess with other people. I don't know what the truth is there, so we're just going to talk about how we pick shadows. So, my rule, and this is, as I always say in my classes, I'm not the only artist in the world. There's more than one way to do things, depending on what style you're going for, what techniques you're using, software, etc., etc., etc. There's other ways to do this. I'm just going to explain how I do it. I use the opposite of my light source. It's pretty simple. It's not really that much of a big brain move. So let's see. We've got a light layer here set up in hard light mode. I've got a shadow layer here set up in multiply mode. Delightful, that's pretty common for how I do it. If you're like a one-layer painter or different software or whatever, you might approach it differently. It's fine. Learn from lots of different people with different techniques and you'll kind of find what works best for you. But let's go to my light layer. Let's say I want my light source to be, I don't know, yellow. I'm gonna go ahead and fill that layer in. Oh, that looks terrible, Chris. Give me a minute. All right, I'm gonna go to my shadow layer. Behold the color wheel here. What's opposite of yellow? Well, it's kind of this blue-purple down here. Great. This is where the purple comes from, the layer. Now, why purple and yellow? Well, because the sun is yellow, and that means that it casts kind of purple-bluish shadows, depending on exactly time of day and all this other kind of stuff. So, and we're going to get into some nuance there, too, because even that is not universally true. Universal truths don't exist in art. That's why this is so kind of irritating to me. All right, so we've got very yellow, very purple right here. What am I going to do about it? I'm going to go to saturation. I'm going to turn it down. Yeah, somewhere usually south of 10 is what I like to go for. Even down to like 5 to 7, something like that. Do the same thing with the light layer. Boom. Ta-da. We've got a pretty competently shaded lighting situation, like right there. But let's kind of push it a little bit. Let's see what else we can do with it. Let's say my light source is actually kind of orangish, red-orange, more of a sunset type deal. Boop, boop. Okay, great. Same thing again, opposite. It's going to give me that kind of blue color. Boop. And that's sort of a bright blue. It's looking real weird on my shadows here, so what am I going to do about that? I'm going to turn the saturation down. All right, better. And I'm just going to tweak the brightness down a little bit. Not all the way, because that's going to take it straight towards black. We don't really want that for most scenarios. Boom. Let's go ahead and turn that saturation down, but I'm going to leave it up a little bit. I want it to kind of show the light color in the area. You know, let's say my spaceship is sitting on a cafe at sunset and having a drink. I don't know. Okay. I just grabbed an old drawing to demonstrate this with, so forgive me if the lighting doesn't perfectly make sense in universe. Okay, cool. Now, I've also seen some people being like, you should only shade with yellow light and purple or blue shadows because the sun is yellow and therefore it's the main light source. You're wrong. I don't know what to tell you. First of all, other lights exist in the world depending on what you're painting. We have light bulbs. Some of them are different colors. But even if you're only painting landscapes that are true to life, the sun changes colors as it goes through different and is refracted through different parts of the atmosphere. For example, sunrise or sunset is going to shift towards orange and red, and your shadows are going to shift accordingly. or an overcast day, or maybe the subject of your painting is standing underneath of a translucent object like a tent or a canopy or whatever that is tinting the light as it filters through, or stained glass window, or whatever. Point is that even if we're sticking to pure photorealistic and only natural lighting, there's still scenarios in which it's better to understand the general theory than it is to just have a universal rule that you never deviate from, because you're going to wind up being wrong. Consider even like a forest canopy is going to tint the light that filters down to the forest floor. There's a lot of situations in which you don't want a hard and fast rule. You want to kind of know what's going on and be nuanced about it. So this opposite method works pretty well for a lot of the scenarios I just talked about. Should work generally for all of them, and then use a little bit of your artistic license and artistic eye as you develop your skill set to... That's wild. Love it. Guess what? Still gonna work. Desaturate, darken. Okay, great. Anyway, so to use a little bit of your artistic eye, artistic license to kind of use this as a starting point for setting up tints and then adjusting as you go. Now, why does this work the way it does? Listen, there's some physics happening here, and I am not the best teacher, I'm not a physicist, to explain the why of that, but I can give you the artistic why of that. And that's because shadows aren't real. You've been lied to. What's actually happening is a shadow is not a thing in and of itself. It's the absence of a light source. So if I have a strong, in this case, yellow light, that gets blocked by my object, and what remains is the absence of the yellow light. It's everything but the yellow source that's not getting through there. So we shade that to kind of simulate that effect with the opposite of the light. Easy enough. Now, if you have an extremely strong light source and no ambient lighting, no bounce back lighting, none of that kind of stuff to fill in the other side where the shadows are, your shadows are going to trend towards black, in which case the tint isn't really going to matter so much, and like you maybe wouldn't even see as much as I've got on the screen there. So that's like a dark room with a single spotlight type scenario where you only see what's in the light and nothing else, and then this kind of doesn't matter as much, you just gotta worry about the light source. But in most situations, even outside or whatever, you still have, when shadows are being cast, you have other light that is filling in that just isn't being tinted the same way as your primary light source. So it's kind of a simulation. There's going to be variation. Like if you go outside and take a photograph and go through with a color picker and really try and scientifically go through and pick all of the individual shadow points, there's going to be a lot of variation there. This material has a big to do with it. Scattering of light sources, reflected light that you may not even notice, even off stuff like asphalt or grass or turf or whatever. Subsurface scattering is a thing, the way that light slightly penetrates an object and then scatters through it and emits a different wavelength. So there's a lot more nuance to all of this. But when we're talking about general rules, this is where I'd start. You just go to the opposite. You paint there, and then you go through and fill it in with the fine details. Let's do one last fun one. Let's say my spaceship here decides to go out for a night on the town, and it's in a... Well, I've got a rainbow on my face. That's fun. Something's reflecting off my windowsill. Neat. Applicable, actually, for the subject matter today. Woo! Let's say that my spaceship goes out for a night on the town. It's in a cyberpunk downtown something or other. There's a bunch of crazy neon lights, and we've got a crazy lighting situation, right? So let's go to my light sources here. Let's say there's a red light over here, and there's a green light over here, and there's a I don't know, what would you see? Like a blue sign, a purple sign? Let's do a purple sign over here. Great. So we've got this crazy lighting situation. Ooh, yeah, I'll even stick a purple in there. Great. Okay, well, what would I do with that for my shadows? Well, same rule applies, just where the light is opposite of the light source is where that opposite shadow tint is going to be most present. There's a lot of variation with this, especially considering what's going on around you. You know, it's going to look different if you've got a mirror standing behind you or glass or whatever. But let's just kind of take this through to its natural end. I've got that purple. Let's go opposite. It's going to give me that green tint. And let's kind of say, all right, if the light's coming from the upper left where my logo is over there. So then the opposite side of this purple here, the tint's going to be in there. Yep. And then over here, same thing. Great. I've got this green right here. And opposite of that, we've got this kind of orange-red, so that's going to kind of fill in this middle space. I'm not going to be too precise with it, that's okay. And I'm going to let them kind of blend together some too. And then we've got this red over here. So let's find that one again. We're going to go opposite of that. It's going to give me kind of this... it should actually... That was over here, right? So that should give me more of like a blue-green tint. Neat. Alright, well, does my silly, quick, stupid, lazy method work? Yeah, it does. I'm going to take that down to like, I'm going to give it like 11%. I'm going to turn the shading down some. Ooh, we've got some fun little things in here. We can tweak that in a bit. And then I've got this light set up. And I'm going to leave that a little more saturated because I do want the crazy colors to show through. Excellent. Now, if I'm a little disturbed by these strong bands of color I've got in here, what I can also do is go to my shadows again. Since I've got that layer in alpha lock, I didn't get into that too much in this video. I covered a lot in my other lessons. Boom, we can Gaussian blur that to just sort of soften everything up. And now we've got this nice shadow layer that is giving a nice gradient of the tones that you would see, more or less. Okay, that's enough ranting from me today. My general point here is that purple is okay a lot of the time. Depending on your lighting condition, and any universal art rule that you should only ever do this to make your art better and better and better is probably wrong, especially if it fits in a tweet. So, have a nice day.